Guile is in Street Fighter 6. We just got a new trailer today. He's got eyebrows. It all looks really good. Let's analyze it. Here on Talking Block.
All right, welcome back to another episode of EventHubs Talking Block. I am John Catalyst Gray. With me as always is John Velociraptor Guerrero.
Hello. We got Guile. We were not expecting, well, I don't know what we were expecting today. There was some hints that maybe it's going to be that Kimberly character, but during the Summer Games Fest today, they gave us yet another Street Fighter 6 character trailer. This time it is the American hero, Guile, and I dare say, I think he looks better than ever. He's been around for 31 years now? We've seen him a whole bunch of times, but we've never seen him like this. John, first reactions to Guile.
I think he's actually the best looking character in the game so far because it looks like his shaders and the other stuff are a bit better blended than the trailers we've seen. It just like his stage looks great. It's very colorful. They've got an interesting choice there for speaking of the stage, the multicultural flags going on a U.S. aircraft carrier, and they have him labeled as America's hero. So I mean, hey, worldwide hero. I mean, all good either way, right? So, but kind of an interesting choice there because I don't think we'd actually see that on a U.S. aircraft character like that. Maybe carrier, I should say. But yeah. But overall, looks pretty darn good. Like that, I brought back his comb from Street Fighter 2. Brushes his hair, does all that kind of stuff. Like, it's pretty darn, And of course, you and I would be biased towards facial hair, right? So.
Yeah, no, I do like what they did with his little goatee and everything, but that's not the big news. And I would argue it's even bigger news than the fact that Guile's in Street Fighter 6 is that Guile's eyebrows are in Street Fighter 6. And outside of when Jean-Claude Van Damme played him, and inside of the Street Fighter animated series, the character has traditionally never had eyebrows. And I'm very much looking forward to the biggest mystery is how he got those eyebrows. Like, did he let them finally grow out? Did he finally discover Rogaine? Was he in a toxic marriage and he finally got divorced and he's like, hey, my wife didn't let me grow eyebrows, but now, haha.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, they look pretty good, and they're not the most bushy, like out in your face eyebrows. They're fairly subtle, but they exist. And I'm glad that we've escaped that just weird, gross skin flap above his head that was always so jarring to look at. The character looks really good, and before I go farther too, I want to ask the audience, are you hype for Guile eyebrows? Is there anything cooler? Obviously the answer is no, but here, type it into our comment section because that helps with the algorithm. And then also
leave a thumbs up for liking it for the eyebrows too, man. We got to talk about that. You come to EventHubs for the whole eyebrow scaping technology. This is what we do. So.
And then I also want to shout out the fact that he runs the comb through his hair once again, but they've actually created hair instead of what looks like it's traditionally been sort of just like a Play-Doh mold with it doesn't actually interact with the comb. Now the comb actually threads through the hair. It took 30 some years to get there, but we finally do it. Actually, kind of did it in Street Fighter 2, but anyways, the visuals, I think this is the best looking Guile that we've seen yet, and he's changed his color scheme from green and yellow to now like blue and white, but I'm all for it. And his paint splattering when he goes into some of his drive mechanic moves is still the traditional green and yellow. I think that's great. The stage looks good. I am a little bit disappointed that we haven't seen any, there's this one female character in the background of that stage that traditionally does some stuff, and so far we haven't seen what her stuff in Street Fighter 6 will be, but looking forward, maybe it happens in the second or third round.
I would mime that motion she does, but I don't want to be a GIF on every part of the internet. So we'll just go ahead and put the footage up here of what she does. But regardless, the big jump out things for me for Guile is that zoning seems like it's going to be fairly hard to do in this game, like Street Fighter 5, and they're adding basically multi-hit moves to Guile to help blow up the drive impact, the focus, and then the drive parry. Because we've already seen in footage like Ryu and Chun-Li fighting where they're just sitting there parrying the heck out of fireballs. So you throw a raw fireball, like normally it's just like that's parry bait. You're going to be giving your opponent basically free drive gauge or, just opening yourself up for death. And so what they've done with Guile, the multi-hitting stuff that we mentioned, but also they give him as a solid puncher or whatever, basically the baby booms. That's what we call them in the community. little sonic booms you can throw out there, which are very fascinating because that's kind of like what they did with Remy in Street Fighter 3 to offset the parries. It's like they gave him like 50 fireballs to throw at the opponent. You know, it's like, okay, well you're gonna try to parry this. Okay, well here's 50 of them to try to parry. Good luck with that. And that seems to be what they're doing is adding a number of things to basically, okay, you've got focus, you've got parry. Now here's the things that are going to counter those when it comes to zoning or other stuff. A very fascinating design choice there.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because there's still a couple of unknowns, like how exactly parries work in this game and just how effective they are at nullifying fireballs and giving the player that nullified the fireball an advantage. And Guile's a little different because he usually throws like slower projectiles and then can follow them, or maybe more than one at a time, you know, and he has fast ones as well. But it might be that you can just hold the parry down and absorb them all, but then maybe you don't get meter for doing so, or maybe your advantage really isn't that great, or if he throws a slow one and you parry it, it's like that's fine, but he still gets to like follow it in and he still has some kind of advantage. I don't know, but as soon as you put parry in like as a universal sort of option for everybody at almost any time, yeah, it's gonna do a number on projectile characters. And Guile, for what it's worth, Guile was, I think, the first successful zoning type character in Street Fighter V that was actually somewhat successful and then became a very good character. But it used to be that, you know, if you threw fireballs and if you depended on fireballs, it just wasn't going to work for you. And Capcom made him work in a game where zoning was not the go-to. And so I have a decent bit of faith here that they'll make him work in this one as well with all of the moving parts that we've seen. But you bring up something interesting in that we got to see all three of his supers, and the characters in this game will have access to 3 supers, and they do seem to be varying in strength. The first one is the Sonic Hurricane, and that comes from Alpha 3, where he basically just throws a massive sonic boom that hits a handful of times. He's got that also in Street Fighter V. And then the second one, like you mentioned, is it's called Solid Puncher, but much better put, Baby Booms, where it essentially replicates his V-Trigger in Street Fighter V, his V-Trigger 1, I should say, where he gets to throw a whole bunch of little ones and basically occupy the screen with them. And then the third one is the coolest super in the game yet, maybe in the game at all, the coolest thing I've ever seen Guile do, especially when he's got eyebrows. It's Crossfire Somersault, and this is his like level 3. He does a combination of his Sonic Hurricane into the coolest flash kick I've ever seen. He steps on your chest and then in slow motion does the final flash kick, launches you back up into the air. You're definitely dead after he does this, but it's okay. Like it's cool. So Guile's looking really cool, and they're incorporating, of course, all of his traditional moves. Sure, you got the booms, you got the flash kicks and such, but then you're seeing an upside down kick. Us crouch techers are going to get are happy to see that come back. But then also we're seeing some new things. He's got a bunch of target combos, and like you said, that probably plays into how this game is going to work. I want to point out Reborn Odin, who's I very much appreciate him as a fan of the show, always all over the front page. He had this comment, and I wanted to point it out because I think it's interesting. He says, a lot of the combos we've been seeing across these trailers have been target combos. I'm almost certain that target combos are going to be the main bread and butter of the combo system in SF6. This is because the primary focus is going to be on the neutral and footsies, with combos being pretty short outside of drive rush canceling. There's going to be a de-emphasis on frame traps and stagger pressure, and maybe, and I'm actually kind of intrigued if that's what Capcom does, because that's so much been what we've seen in Street Fighter V, and like that works. That's definitely a mode of playing in where it's all about frame traps and stagger pressure, but it would feel fairly refreshing at this point, and I'm thinking about it as someone performing that kind of, not just defending against it, performing that kind of offense, that I'd like to see more neutral. Like I was hoping for that in Street Fighter V, in the transition from 4 to 5, and maybe they're doing that even more here, where you don't just get on someone and try to stick on them. It's more about getting a hit, getting a little damage, resetting back into neutral, and earning that hit again. And Guile's gameplay here has been, I think, somewhat telling on what we're going to get, a new piece of the picture.
Yeah, I personally feel the opposite. I think this game is going to be more crazy than Street Fighter V because you've got 3 super bars to work with. And one of the things that I noticed is they said that with Guile's Sonic Hurricane, it can be used as a reversal. And I'm starting to think that super moves are actually going to be the new invincible attacks, because I'm assuming EX moves are not going to have any invincibility on them at all. because you get too many of those to be able to just kind of randomly throw them out. And the fact that, you want to make a reversal move powerful, but also, like cost something, right? To be something significant. And people are going to have a lot of drive gauge to work with, but what they're not going to have a lot to work with is super meter. So I'm believing right now that people's level 1 supers are often going to be used as a reversal, invincible reversal, to kind of get people back off of them, which is fascinating.
Yeah, I as far as I can tell, I think that supers in this game are basically like ultras in Street Fighter 4. Invincible on startup, a big possible comeback sort of a scenario, but it's just like you kind of throwing it all at the wall right there with that one thing, and if it doesn't work out, you're getting your butt kicked for it. I'm not so sure that you won't have invincible reversals otherwise, because they've had those in not even locked behind. They're locked behind EX moves in Street Fighter 5, but before that, you had invincible reversals without using any meter, and that was kind of a matter of fact thing in Street Fighters previous. So I wouldn't go as far as...
It did depend. In Street Fighter 3, they did not have invincible reversals unless you use meter as well. So 3 and 5 are in that way, where like 4 and 2 had the invincible reversals without meter. You just had to do the move. So it does depend on the game where they put it in, but yeah.
Sure. So I still think that to take that away completely, or to put it only behind supers, would be interesting. Although, yes, maybe parries are like frame 1, and you can do something like, on Wake Up with parrying, and that adds another level of that traditional Street Fighter sort of rock, paper, scissors on Wake Up, and where invincible reversals are usually a big part of that equation. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. There's a lot of little tiny, is it this or that? Little like one frame this or 1 pixel that we don't know the answers to yet, that will be very important in giving us that full picture. But man,
and that might be the way it is right now, and it could change very heavily by this time that, this might be very old footage we're working with as well. Yeah,
sure.
One of the other things is we noticed that supers don't have pain effects on them, but all the drive system stuff does. And there's some footage here where Luke does a DP and Guile punishes him, and he hits him down low, and you can see some paint come out. So it does look like counter hits actually will build up your drive gauge in this. So instead of like a crush counter or whatever, crush counter will build V gauge. This is going to build a drive gauge when you get a counter hit. And it seems like one of the ways that Capcom wants you to replenish your drive gauge basically is fishing for counter hits in the in neutral and other places like that.
That
seems
might
like
imply,
it's going to be a big part of stuff.
That could imply invincibility on that then, for that DP.
It could.
Yeah.
It does depend, and I mean sometimes when we were speaking with Capcom about Street Fighter 5, they said that the ability to reverse momentum in this this game is huge. It's just a gigantic thing, and so we had to make the crush counter system, the DP punishment system, really intense, because the ability, for example, like Rashid could EX DP you and then get Okazemi and go run you over for the entire match, and it was like literally he could just guess one time and then win. And thank goodness they patched it out and realized Rashid was designed incredibly dumb. And they finally fixed him, so he's not just insanely crazy, but he's still pretty bad. But I do wonder in this is like how powerful is a reversal going to be? As we were talking about, does it have to be mapped to a super gauge, or is it do you get some invincibility, or what happens? But it's Luke's DP, so it goes about half screen, does about 5,000 damage. We already know this, so maybe there's certain DPs that are counter hit, some ones that are not. Like Ibuki's, we know is not all counter hit unless she does like EX, right? So it does depend, but there's some interesting stuff going on right now.
Yeah, absolutely, and most importantly, it's continuing to make us hungry for more. It's not leaving us with a bunch of feelings of, oh, this wasn't handled well, or why didn't they tell us this, or oh, only this instead. Things so far with Street Fighter 6 have felt substantial, exciting, and energizing. Let's keep this momentum going, Capcom. Good job so far.